I'm a Boca Bearings team driver. I've been talking to the guys at Boca Bearings and they asked me to put together a quick little tutorial about changing out bearings, some of the things and tips that some other racers or people new to the hobby might want to look for when changing out their bearings. So what I've got here is a kit that I bought for my Tekno E-buggy. It's the green seal, Boca Bearing green seal, which I've had pretty good success with. I've got the green seal on all my vehicles. They do make different levels. I know they got the Eco level, which is a black seal. It's about 99 cents per bearing. This is the upgrade from that. So what I'm doing here is I've watched some tutorials. I've noticed that sometimes people start with their vehicle intact, and then half that tutorial is spent with them taking it apart. So what I've actually done is I've taken the front end of my Tekno E-buggy apart to make it a little more quicker and to the point. So when we jump into this tutorial, we'll be right into changing bearings. Another reason why I jumped in with the front end apart was because the Tekno differentials, you actually have to take them apart, rebuild the diffs to put the bearings on. Some manufacturers, you can actually slide the bearing over the outdrives, but with the Tekno ones, you actually have to take the diffs apart and slide it on. So we're jumping into this tutorial. I've already rebuilt my front diff. I have the Boca Bearing green seals on there, so it's ready to go once I finish the rest of my front end. So what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial is pretty much just changing the bearings on the front A-arms. So we'll jump right into it, take it apart, let's see how these bearings sound, and see if it was time to change it, or if it's just more of a performance upgrade at this point. So each vehicle's different, especially if it's 8 scale or 10 scale. With the Tekno ones, there's a screw in here. You pull it out. Let me see where my tool is. You just slide out a pin. You slide this off, and you can see right there that my bearing's looking a little rough there. On Sunday, a couple of days ago, I spent about 5 hours at the track practicing. So this one's pretty easy. We'll see how these bearings sound. One thing that you're looking for when you're changing out your bearings is kind of spin them. These ones actually sound pretty good. I have some bearings over here that I worked on from another vehicle. It was actually my 4-wheel drive 10 scale buggy, and some of these bearings actually started sounding really gritty and they didn't turn. What I always recommend is this is a paintbrush. You can also have a chopstick or something like that. You put the bearing on the end of it, you can turn it. I'm not sure if the mic will pick this up, but you can hear it sounds really gritty, and you can also feel it's not turning very good. So that's a sign that it's time to change your bearing. This one, while it's dirty, is actually sounding pretty good. The main reason I'm changing it is because I've decided to do a performance upgrade. I want to run all Boca bearings in all my vehicles. I've had a lot of success, especially with the green ones. One tip that I would have is when you're popping these bearings out, if you use something like a screwdriver, be very careful, especially if you want to save these bearings or clean them, because what happens is there's a rubber seal on here and you can puncture it. So if you do plan to reuse your bearing, one thing I would suggest is try to do something with more of a blunt tip. So I'm going to use the end of this paintbrush here, pop that out. Let's see how this one sounds. And this one you can start, I'm not sure if the mic's going to pick it up or not, but you can start hearing that it's sounding like it's time to change the bearings. So one thing you want to do, and another reason why I jumped ahead in this this tutorial or video tutorial, was because if you have a dirty vehicle, it's really not good to change out the bearings. Usually the bearings are the last part that you want to change. You want to make sure your vehicle's nice and clean before you stick a brand new pair of bearings in. And after I was practicing, the whole entire vehicle was pretty nasty. I'm not sure if you can see some of the dirt still on there. So I thought, again, it would just be better to jump ahead, have most of the vehicle clean before switching out the bearings. So when you order a kit, you can actually order quantities of 10 from Boca Bearing, or else you can order a specific kit. So this one, what I've got is a kit just for this Tekno E-buggy. So all the different size bearings come in little bags to make it pretty easy to find. Once you get going, I always try to have 10 extra bearings on hand. I personally like having extra bearings for the A-arms and the spindles. So these are areas that wear quite a bit, so I always try to get extra ones for this and then extra ones for my diff, because I found that those ones wear out quite a bit quicker than, say, the bearings in the steering. You can see these little bearings here. A lot of those will be used for the steering. The ones in the steering actually last a lot longer than the ones where you get a lot of dirt contact. So what I'm going to do is find the bearings that match up with these sizes. I believe this is one of them. So that's one. I'm not sure if this one's it. So it looks like that's it. So the one bearing goes in here. Again, it's pretty easy to change out the bearings, but the guys just wanted me to make a quick video. When you're changing out the bearings, you also want to check out your pins. That's one thing that I have had some experience with. When these pins wear down, they get really fine. And there's nothing worse than having a race where you don't finish because your pins are worn and break. So while you're changing the bearings, it's also a good opportunity to go through all this stuff and kind of clean it out. So I'm going to try to make this quick, put this one together again. I also have some black grease, and let me see, I should have some. So when I'm cleaning, I usually have some Q-tips on hand so I can clean these out, get all the dirt and crud out of there. You can see it was time to clean this vehicle up. Clean the pin. What I do is clean this. So what you want to do is just take a little bit of black grease on any of the contact areas. I know this isn't really about the bearings, but it does keep your car moving good. I rub a little bit of grease there. Take the pin. Make sure that fits nice and flush. And then we're ready to put this back together. Again, I'll take a little bit of extra time, clean this out. And again, I don't want to go into too much detail because each different manufacturer has slightly different ways of putting their vehicles together. With the Tekno, there's a little notch groove. So I'm going to slide that in with the notch groove out. You can see there. The other thing is, make sure you got some Loctite on hand. I should have a little plastic bag here. I thought I did. I'll take this one out and use it. So I always put a little bit of Loctite down. When I first got into the hobby, I still might be a little guilty of it. I was using too much Loctite. What I'd do is I'd just kind of put Loctite on, it'd be way too much, and then I'd have a terrible time trying to get it off. So what I do is put the Loctite on a plastic bag, just put a little bit on there, just enough. Especially with these e-buggies, they have so much power and torque that you really want to have some in there, but you don't want to put too much that it actually makes it impossible to get it back off. So we got that going. I want to make sure I tighten this down good. That's good and tight. So there, that process is done. That one's ready to go. You can see it's nice and clean now, nice and smooth. So if you do have an opportunity to work on your vehicles, I would definitely suggest making sure you look to Boca Bearings and try to upgrade them, because this is a key thing. They'll seize up if you don't take proper care of your bearings. So it's really easy, especially when you're working on the diffs, or you're changing the diff oil out and you have the vehicle apart already. It's really easy just to access these bearings, and it does pay off. So I'll work on the next arm. Let's see if I can go a little quicker here. I think I actually have this loosened already. Pop the pin. That pin looks pretty good. Slide that off. Again, so this bearing sounds pretty good, but I'm just going to upgrade it. And this bearing, again, you can tell it's been, it's had some use put on it, but it's not too bad. Let's get our new bearings. Make sure that you clean wherever the bearing is going to go. You want to make sure you clean it nice, because there's no sense putting brand new clean bearings in and only putting them and sitting them in a vehicle that's dirty. So you want to make sure you take your time with this, get the vehicle nice and clean before you put your bearings in. Pop the bearing in. Again, just like the first one I did, I'm going to check and make sure my pin is good. And that's one thing that the Tekno vehicles, the wear on them is awesome. I've had some manufacturers where, this pin, it'll be down to like a needle point in half the time that I've ran this one. So I am really happy with the quality of this one. Upkeep's pretty easy. It's easy to work on, so that's another reason why I'm upgrading it. I plan to have this one for a while, so I want to spend a little bit extra and upgrade it from the Eco bearings to the green seal. One thing also, when you're putting your pins back in with these axles, you just want to note, because sometimes they'll start wearing. I think this one's starting to get a little bigger, so that's something you might want to look for when you're changing it. In, slide my pin. And actually, when they asked me to make this tutorial, the changing of the bearings is actually pretty easy. It's the rest of the stuff getting to the bearings is actually the most difficult part. Let's see, did I lose that bearing? Yep. Let's hold on 1 second while I find this bearing. Okay. I'm actually planning to do split this up into a 3-part tutorial. So I'll do the front portion of my vehicle, then I'll do the center and steering, and then I'll do the rear end of it. Again, that just makes it hopefully a shorter tutorial, more to the point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to button this vehicle back up, but that's pretty much it for changing the bearings on the front end, minus the steering obviously. But you've got, most vehicles have 2 bearings on each side, and then bearings on the center diff. Hopefully you'll check back for part 2 and part 3. And I would like to say thank you to Boca Bearings for giving me the opportunity to represent their company this year as a team driver. I've really enjoyed the opportunity. Hopefully my first tutorial has went relatively smooth and straightforward, and everyone can understand it. If you're thinking about changing bearings, definitely give it a go. The performance upgrade is key, and then also just keeping your vehicle moving nice and smooth is also important. I see a lot of people investing money in their electronics and everything, and that's great, but if you don't take care of your bearings, it'll also result in a do not finish or did not finish race. So spend that extra little bit of money on your maintenance, keep that vehicle up and running, and keep it rolling smooth. Once again, I'm Kevin Thomas, Boca Bearing team driver. Thanks for watching my tutorial.